Hi friends, welcome to Kerala PSC HSA English classes. This is class 4. I am discussing on the poem William Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey. I have decided to divide my class into two parts so that I can cover the whole poem. Line by line interpretations will be given. So before moving on to the poem, just know some general informations about Tintern Abbey. Wordsworth's main contribution to the lyrical ballads, which was a collaborative work of both Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It's a collection of poems, and Tintern Abbey is the last poem in the book. Tintern Abbey is considered a miniature of the philosophical and autobiographical epic poem he never completed, namely The Recluse. He celebrates his belief in pantheism, a doctrine that equates God with the forces and laws of the universe. The full title of the poem is Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey on Revisiting the Banks of the Wye During a Tour. July 13, 1798. The poem was composed in 1798, immediately after his second visit to Tintern Abbey along with his sister Dorothy Wordsworth. He had first visited the Wye Valley when he was 23 years old. His return 5 years later occasioned this poem. He composed this poem in blank verse, that is, with unrhymed lines in iambic pentameter. It is a monologue, and his sister is a passive listener in the poem. So, here the subject is about memory, especially the childhood memories of William Wordsworth in communion with nature. The poem illustrates the principle of two consciousness. That is, the poet being aware of the consciousness of two people, an idea Wordsworth introduced in the poem The Prelude. And also the concept of rites of passage has been applied in Tintern Abbey. So that's all about some general aspects about the poem. Now we'll move on to the Tintern Abbey poem. 5 years have passed, 5 summers, with the length of 5 long winters, and again I hear these waters rolling from their mountain springs with a sweet inland murmur. Once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs, which on a wild secluded scene impress thoughts of more deep seclusion and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. The day is come when I again repose here under this dark sycamore and view these plots of cottage ground, these orchard tufts, which at this season, with their unripe fruits among the woods and copses, lose themselves, nor with their green and simple hue disturb the wild green landscape. Once again I see these hedgerows, hardly hedgerows, little lines of spotty wood run wild, these pastoral farms green to the very door, and wreaths of smoke sent up in silence from among the trees. With some uncertain notice, as might seem, of vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods, or of some hermit's cave where by his fire the hermit sits alone. The poem begins with a reference to the poet's revisit to the Wye. I have already said, after a lapse of 5 years. The poet once again sees the river flowing over the steep and lofty cliffs The flow is over the plots of the cottage ground, the orchards with its unripe fruits, clad in one green hue, and over groves and copses. The landscape is described as harmonious. The earth and the sky are calm. The orchards and the woods add to the tranquility. The landscape extends to the pastoral farms. The Wye murmurs its mountain source. So there is tranquility in the scene of the river and its neighborhood. He recites the objects he sees again and describes their effect upon him. The steep, lofty cliffs impress upon him thoughts of more deep seclusion. He leans against a dark sycamore tree. Sycamore is a Eurasian maple tree. It has 5 lobed leaves. It mostly grows in Britain and North America. He looks at the cottage grounds and the orchard trees whose fruit is still unripe. He sees wreaths of smoke rising up from the cottage chimneys between the trees and imagines that they might rise from vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods or from the cave of a hermit in the deep forest. Though absent long, these forms of beauty have not been to me as is a landscape to a blind man's eye. But oft in lonely rooms and mid the din of towns and cities, I have oved to them in hours of weariness, sensations sweet, felt in the blood and felt along the heart, and passing even into my purer mind with tranquil restoration, feelings too of unremembered pleasure, such perhaps as may have had no trivial influence on that best portion of a good man's life. His little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. Nor less I trust to them I may have owed another gift of aspect more sublime, that blessed mood, in which the burden of the mystery, in which the heavy and the very weight of all this unintelligible world is lightened. That serene and blessed mood in which the affections gently lead us on until the breath of this corporal frame and even the motion of our human blood, almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body and become a living soul, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. The poet persists in his memory of the beautiful scenes, forms, and shapes of nature. These scenes and appearances have been a source of comfort to him. In his hours of weariness, he used to derive comfort from the source of the scenes which served as a stimulus to kind and sympathetic deeds that gave him tranquil restoration. This influence of a good man's life gave him nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. This experience and its remembrance have had a profound spiritual impact on him, resulting in spiritual enlightenment. His spiritual experience has also given him a serene and blessed mood. The spiritual thought has made him a living soul, imparting joy and harmony to his life. The poet becomes indebted to the landscape and the scene around it to restore himself. He says that there is a mystical experience that leads us to the understanding of the life of things.